YUURRR. Welcome everybody to episode 2 of the Purpose Podcast. I'm joined here by
Diggy
and Mikey.
Let's go, baby. I just want to thank everybody first of all for all the positive feedback we got on the first episode. I didn't know what to expect first coming into it, so I really do appreciate all the comments that I got from it. I know I can say the same thing about Diggy. We're super grateful that you guys enjoyed everything. But moving forward, we got a few topics to talk about. Let's get right into it. How about it, boys?
All right, what's the first question, bro? What you got for us?
All right, so let's see. First question. Let's go with how can codependency be helpful and or harmful?
Mike, you want to start that one?
I think that's kind of a difficult question because, speaking from personal experience, I know that, there can be a healthy amount of dependency, especially on if you have a girlfriend or boyfriend, significant other, because, if you're ever going through anything or you need someone to just kind of count on and be there for you, in that aspect, in that light, that's a really good person to have. And, it's really, I feel underrated to have someone kind of sitting in your corner to be there for you when you need it. But, also, personally speaking from experience, I, as far as a negative light, it's also difficult sometimes because, if you're so dependent on somebody that it affects, your ability to be okay when you're alone and, just making sure that you're okay without needing anybody else, because that is a big problem that you can run into. I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. We touched on that a little bit in the first podcast with Birch, talking about consuming yourself in your own thoughts when you're kind of overthinking. If you're super codependent on somebody and the time you finally take the time to be on your own and everything, you kind of take that time to just really overthink everything. And that's kind of one of the other questions that we'll get into later is just overthinking in general. But I think the moment that you become too codependent on somebody, they're just you lose yourself in a sense. Again, another thing that I touched on the podcast with Birch. But I think one thing that's really important is solidifying yourself as a human being first before you try to depend on somebody else. I do think, however, again, we touched on it in the other episode, was that you want to have somebody in your corner really at all times, somebody that you can get along with, somebody with the same interests and stuff. So I think that's definitely pretty big. But again, there has to be a point where you realize that you got to be your own human on your own. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of times people tend to, more specifically in relationships. Codependency doesn't necessarily mean just being codependent on a specific person. I feel like we can agree that there's stuff that you could be codependent on, such as drugs, alcohol, video games, stuff like that. I'm codependent on fucking video games.
Nicotine for me.
But yeah, so I think definitely there is huge negatives when it comes to codependency, just because, like I said before, you lose yourself, and that kind of turns into an issue within itself. However, viewing it in the positive light, I think, like we talked about, is having somebody in your corner, being there for you when you need it the most. If you're going through some hardships, there's definitely someone that you should be able to depend on. However, that shouldn't carry all the weight of any issues that you're going through. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So back to kind of a point that I just made is that there's things that you could definitely be, codependent on as opposed to just a significant other. Is there, what do you guys think would be something that people depend on?
I feel like being codependent on a hobby is something that might be very useful to help people get through tough times.
Absolutely.
For me, it's whether it's video games, making content such as music, videos, anything like that. It's just something to distract you and just brings joy. So I feel like what I always tell some friends if they're ever going through hard times is sometimes you just need to find a hobby to get you through things. Even if it's coloring, hiking, whatever it is, whatever you enjoy doing, it's better to find a hobby than just to sit in bed and not really do anything and just sit in your thoughts and all that stuff. So, that would probably be my one thing. Like one piece of advice is find a hobby and you could become codependent on that. Or you know, like something like that. Like
I mean, it's something that Birch touched on. He said like go on a walk, go on a hike, do something like that. So definitely find something that occupies your time and your mind.
Yeah, and I think that like an important thing to note too is that like kind of what he was touching on is that you can be codependent, but if you can also be codependent on something that can be beneficial to you, that's even better. Because right. I'm very codependent on like my girlfriend, but and I wish I was more codependent on like things that would benefit my life. So if you can find whether it's a hobby, working on a craft, a skill, school, whatever the case may be, if you can become dependent on anything that can also benefit your life, I think that should be like the goal, kind of like anything like most idealistic, like
yeah, I agree. Like as I said before, whenever you do something that you're passionate about and you love and you become codependent on something, like we talked about, like going on the walks, you used to do the whole music thing, this podcast for one. I mean, I feel like I'm really codependent on this. Like I just had a conversation with someone recently about the fact that this is one of, if not the only source of happiness that I have right now, which does sound really dark. I know it's kind of bad. Like we kind of just hopped into this podcast pretty deep.
This guy's getting deep.
Yeah. But I mean, it's true. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't have my own mental health issues and my struggles that I go through. But this is something that, as I said, I'm codependent on, and I'm happy to be doing something like this, especially with some of my closest friends. It's, again, not only am I becoming codependent on this podcast, but also, I have my friends here with me. I mean, whether I view this podcast as something that I want to do to help other people, it definitely helps me as well. So it's not just like other people benefiting from it. It's also me. You know?
Because I mean, like as the podcast go, we're probably gonna start opening up more, talking about more deeper things on a personal level. And
absolutely,
I think that's gonna be a side that a lot of people are probably gonna start to see, especially between us. Like you're gonna get to know us better, and I don't know. I feel like it's gonna create more of an understanding for us in general. Like we're gonna understand each other better, understand ourselves, and people understand what we're really trying to do. The more they watch.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. And then going back to the point of finding something beneficial in terms of codependency, I think some of those things could also be, pretty bad. Somebody who lets that codependency be their only source of A, happiness, and two, just something that they gravitate towards too, as opposed to, like talking their issues out. I feel like that's another thing is that whether these things truly help us or not, like if you want to go on a hike and do that, let that be your codependency, that's one thing for sure. But at the same time, like you can't run away from your issues forever. At some point you gotta face your issues, So I think there's definitely positives and negatives to both, something that could be beneficial, but also something that, is negative for somebody.
Yeah, and like we're focusing kind of like, how to find something beneficial to become codependent on, and like, occupy your time in a beneficial way. Like what advice would you give to anyone else, like as far as like finding the strength or like the willingness to go out and look for something to benefit you? Like how would you, I want to say, like, guide them into like
finding something to be
finding something that they would like that could help benefit them?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's stuff that you could do. Like for one, just being able to take the chance to do it. I feel like you and I had a conversation earlier about, just pulling the trigger in a sense, in a way to spring yourself forward, like find something and be willing to give it your all. You can't half-ass anything. I feel like if you try to take the time and say, I'm going to do this, but you're only halfway in, you're only cheating yourself. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think my best point of advice would be find something that you really like, you're definitely passionate about, and do it full force. Don't, like I said, half-ass it, because at the end of the day, you're doing yourself a disservice. Not only are you wasting your time, but you're also not helping yourself.
Yeah, like another thing too, how like people will go to the gym to create a better version of themselves and like help with their mental health, whatever the case may be, even just physical health. But like, but you see so many people, they'll go to the gym for a couple of days, like myself included. I've done this a million times, but you do well, you go to the gym every day for like a week or two and stuff, and then you kind of just let it like fade out. I feel like it's so difficult to not only like start and like do well for a little bit, but to keep that consistent and then eventually like develop a habit into something that will really positively impact your life.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, it's so hard to find that drive to keep going, even especially when like things get difficult or tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, the way I see it is, like, especially, like, what Mike's talking about, like, it's tough. Like, once you get started, it's tough over time. Like, you might lose kind of that motivation and stuff. But the way I see it and the way I tell a lot of friends that are going through things is if you really had enough of putting up with other people's problems and now their problems is becoming yours, and you've really just been fed up with it, I think nothing is going to change until you've had enough. Like, when enough is enough for you, you're really going to start doing what you want. You're really going to start to see yourself make better decisions on what you want to do. And personally, for me, like, I've reached a point with other people in my life that in the past where I just put up with their problems, and you know, I thought it was beneficial for me at the time, but it got to a point where I was just so tired of it. I had to say enough's enough, and I had to cut them out of my life. And it sucked at the time, you know, like losing friends and stuff. Like, it sucks, but it allows you to really find yourself and like be able to know what you can get through, because that, I feel like, is important because you're all you got. So the minute you decide to make the hard decisions for yourself is the minute you can truly be happy, I believe, because now you're putting yourself before others, and I feel like that's what you got to do. But it's easier said than done. Like, once you believe you had enough, then you're going to do whatever you want. Once you've been to that point, that's it, you know?
You know, and I like what you said about, like, you have to find that point where enough is enough, because, you know, there is a really good feeling in, you know, like, not hurting yourself, you know, for the benefit to, like, help somebody else. But, you know, there is a good feeling in knowing that you are helping someone else, even if it's not necessarily benefiting you. Like, you know, whether that's, you know, just being a listening ear to someone who's having problems, or offering advice, or, you know, going out of your way just to make sure that someone's okay. There's like a benefit to yourself in helping others. You know, it's a good feeling. It can also help you. But I think it's important to know, like, when enough becomes enough, like he was saying, because, you know, like, personally, from personal experience, like, I've gotten to that point before where, you know, I've had to cut some people out of my life, you know, just because of the amount of effort that I was putting into them was, you know, having such, like, harmful effects on myself, that it just took me a long time to realize that, you know, you have to put yourself as a priority. And, you know, at a certain point, like, enough is enough.
Yeah, for sure. What you guys were just talking about, just like helping people and like doing that whole thing, and like there's definitely self-gratification in that. I definitely agree. And I talked to you earlier about this. Is just like, for me, I love to help people. It's like literally the reason why I'm doing this podcast. You know what I'm saying? Like, I find it, like, I'm trying to find ways to help people any possible way I can. However, like you guys said, there's got to be a point where enough is enough. So what I said to you earlier is there comes a point where you have to be selfish. Being selfish isn't entirely a terrible thing. I think being selfish not only benefits you as a human being, but also your mental health. It just is completely drained when you let other people be the focus of your entire life. The minute where you start putting, I mean, I put other people before myself, but the minute where it becomes like just like a natural reaction where it's just like it's not even thought of, it's subconscious, like you're thinking about other people's issues before you think about yours, that's when it becomes an issue. And like you guys said, you know enough's enough, and then that's the point where you got to be selfish. I mean, at the end of the day, like you said earlier, you go to bed at night and all you got is you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So there comes a point where, like I said, you have to be selfish and you have to be willing to do what's best for you. And I'm glad that you guys touched on the whole cutting people out aspect of your life. I have definitely cut some people out of my life, and I was thinking about this earlier. It's cutting these people out of your life doesn't always have to end in a malicious way. It doesn't always have to end with, I don't fuck with this person anymore. I don't like this person anymore. It doesn't have to end that way. And a lot of the times in my past experience, it doesn't end that way. I still have, I would like to think that I still have a relationship with the people that I cut from my life in the past. And I feel like saying cut people from my past isn't exactly what I mean. It's just, I feel like there comes a point where where these people in your life really add no benefit. And like I said, it sounds selfish, but you know, as I said before, you need to be selfish at some point. So cutting this person out of your life doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, like I said, malicious intent. It doesn't have to be like you guys ended on bad terms. You just have to find a place where you're like, look, like this person and I don't mesh well in terms of my future. You know, one of my best friends, Nolan, you both know him, he gave me a quote a while ago. And he said, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And since then, I have made that one of like my forefronts. You know what I'm saying? Because if you surround yourself with people that don't have the same drive and same passion to be better individuals each and every day, you're only hurting yourself. Like if I hang out with somebody that, you know, just wants to sit at home and do nothing, no job, no school, like I'm just going to fall into that. You know, we're like creatures where we, what am I trying to say here? We kind of just like adapt to the stuff that's around us, you know, like we just pick up stuff that we see everywhere, you know, like my point being that if you surround yourself with people that don't make you better, then you shouldn't be there with them.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You know, you said like it's good to surround yourself with positive peers and other people who are doing great things. And you know, I'm really grateful for like, you know, a lot of the people that I've had in my life. You know, you mentioned Nolan, like, you know, I grew up with Nolan, and I just think that how do I put this?
I think honestly, I feel like what you're trying to say at the moment is like having somebody like Nolan who is realistically like a really hard ass. Like he's
brutally honest.
Yeah, he's brutally honest,
straight.
and a lot of times that's what people need. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, like that's how I am too. Like I'm brutally honest, but like I feel like you need friends that are gonna look after you and be honest with you. Like you need someone that's looking out for you, even if it's something that you don't want to hear. You know?
Exactly. And that's issues that I've had with friends in the past is that you're not able to communicate with them the things that they're doing wrong. And at the end of the day, look, if you're one of those people that hears something negative from somebody that you see as a friend, right? If somebody tells you that what you're doing is wrong, or that they're just trying to get answers from you, like what are you doing? Like what's your motive here? I would say to you, don't take that as like malicious intent behind it. They're not hating on you. They're not. Look, if somebody is willing to have that conversation with you and be honest with you, those are the friends that you should surround yourself with, because those are the most important people in my life. Like we're using Nolan as an example. Is he's been a person that pushes me forward, and not only through words that he says to me, but just he leads by example. And those are people that are super important in my life, that because I'm good with constructive criticism. I am. Anybody that's willing to tell me that what I'm doing is wrong, I'm willing to take into account. However, I was not always that way, and I keep bringing Nolan up, but he's one of those people that's kind of like formed me into like having a backbone, you know?
You know, just to touch back, I lost my train of thought for a second, but I remember I was talking to Nolan, and you mentioned that peers, like, you know, your peer, like you should surround yourself with positive influences, right? And like other people who, you know, want to do better for themselves. He was telling me that, you know, when you're with your friends and you're telling them your accomplishments, and it shouldn't sound like bragging. You know what I mean? If you're in a room talking to people and you're talking about yourself and your accomplishments and what you've done, you know, you shouldn't feel like you're bragging about yourself. It should be normalized. You know what I mean? You shouldn't feel that, you know, you're egoing somebody or anything like that for, you know, just simply talking about your accomplishments. And I think that having positive peers and, you know, other people who are doing, you know, and you can have a positive, you know, peer and be it totally different, you know, like areas in life, you know, like just because, you know, like income, anything like that, you know, job, anything, that doesn't really mean anything necessarily, because, you know, you could have two polar opposites but still have a positive peer influence. You know what I mean? But I just like the idea that, like, you know, no matter what you're saying, it should never feel like you're bragging about yourself while talking to your friends.
Yeah, I agree. And another thing that I've heard, I can't remember where the quote comes from, but it's just not direct quote anyway, but it's like somebody, like, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room, because that means I can't learn from the people around me. You know what I'm saying? And that's like, it's huge. You know what I'm saying? So like we look at friends, like we look at Nolan, we look at other friends in our same group that keep pushing forward because that's what they want to do. At this point, I've surrounded myself with people that only want to do better for themselves, because that's, you know, in turn, it's what makes me happy. You know what I'm saying? Like it's more important for me to worry about myself, but also have the criticism from the peers around me, you know? So I think people that I surround myself with now, I never take anything that they're saying personal. I'm always thinking that what you want, like what you're saying to me, is because you want me to keep moving forward and keep being successful, you know? So back to my point, if you're one of those people where you take these things personal from the people around you, rethink it for a second. Really sit there and think, is what this person's saying to me, is this negative, or is it something that they want me to listen to because it could benefit me in the future? I think that's one big thing that a lot of people need to focus on, is that these people aren't necessarily hating on you. You know what I'm saying? They just want better for you.
And another thing too, you know, constructive criticism is a really hard thing to take for a lot of people, you know, myself included, but you know, and it might be a lot easier to, you know, take it from someone who knows you on like a personal level, like you said, like a good friend or something like that. But there's also a lot of like peers and, you know, role models that you can have in your life who can give you constructive criticisms, but might seem a little bit harsher in the moment. You know what I mean? Because you could have like, you know, whether it's, you know, having to do with your career or, you know, whatever the case may be, you could have a boss or, you know, someone, you know, completely trash what you were doing or like what you wanted and stuff like that. And I just think that it's really important to kind of just give yourself some time to like sit back and give yourself some perspective to really try and understand what their intention is, you know, and understanding that it's not necessarily just to bash you or to make you feel bad about whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I agree. And back to the point that you made about like not feeling like you're bragging to these people, right? I guarantee you, anybody that is having that difficult conversation with you, I promise you, whenever you give them an update about how your life is moving in a positive way, they're going to be the ones to cheer you on. I promise you. I mean, this past week, I applied for 2 different positions where I work at. I applied for 2 different positions that both give me a few dollar raise, right? So in turn, I obviously want to do, you know, the best I can in those interviews, you know, and then I bring that up to my friends, you know, because some of them are in really high positions and they're doing really well for themselves. So like I said, you never want to be the smartest person in the room ever. Because then like I said, you can never learn anything. So back to the story about these 2 interviews, a lot of the knowledge that I got in terms of interviews came from friends around me. But those same friends are also people that told me, why are you hanging out with this person? Like what are you doing? Are you going to school? Are you doing this? You know, they have those difficult conversations with you. But just as an update, after each one of those interviews that I had this past week, I told them, I said, dude, I fucking killed that interview. I did great in the interview. They're the ones that are the ones cheering you on. They're the ones that are like, yeah, you killed it. Like, I know you did. You're going to get that job. And then when you get that job, they give you your offer. We're going to go and celebrate. Those people that are willing to have the difficult conversation with you are the ones that are going to stick around when you're doing better for yourself, 100% of the time. So, like I said, I think take these thoughts into consideration from your friends. Never think that they're trying to hate on you, especially if there's somebody that you've been around for a while. I mean,
I think that there's something to look into too. You know, like a real friend is not just the one that's going to only gas you up and, you know, like make you feel better about yourself.
I agree.
It's one that's going to tell you when you're wrong and you know, is going to point out the bad and, you know, can do both, you know, and a lot of people, you know, like I'm sure you have friendships where like you're not really close enough with them or you don't really feel that connection to be comfortable enough to tell them, you know, like, oh, maybe I don't think that's a good idea, or like, you know, give them your advice or your opinion on, like, especially if it's in a negative light. And I think that's kind of where, you know, you have like a true friend is someone, or true, like, you know, mentor is someone who's willing to give you that constructive criticism that like you don't necessarily get from people who aren't as close with you or don't care as much.
Right. And the other thing is too, is like, you also want to be careful who you have these conversations with. You know what I'm saying? Like if it's somebody who you're not well acquainted with and you're having the conversation with them, you know, for one, they may not care at all, you know, of anything that you have to say. But if you don't have that comfortability with those people, it turns into the feeling of bragging to people. You know what I'm saying? Like people are gonna take what you're saying and say, okay, like, yeah, what do you want me to do with that information? You know what I'm saying? So like, there's definitely people, like, you want to pick and choose who you have these conversations with, because at the end of the day, not everyone's gonna want the best for you. You know, there's a lot of people that come into your life that may not stick around for, you know, for the long run. They may not want to see you succeed. You know, maybe they're just sticking around to benefit from you. You know, there are people out there for sure that get into relationships with people, friendships with people, just to benefit from them for their own personal gain. There's two different ways about that, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's personal, like I said earlier, if I'm not benefiting from somebody in my life, there's no reason for them to be there. However, it goes both ways as well, though. There, you have to add benefit to each other in order to stick around.
Yeah, it can't be lopsided, because once it's one-sided, then that's when it becomes like a problem. When it's like, oh, you're only friends with them or whatever because they give you all this stuff for free. Like, you don't got to work for it. They benefit you. But when two people can give each other, I guess, different benefits, or like, you know, like, for example, like me and you, like, I have all this experience doing all this kind of stuff with content and stuff. And you bring in this new side of, like, new perspective of helping people and stuff. Like, we work well together. Like, we've always been, like, good friends. And, like, when we're editing, like, we always have, like, a similar idea. You know, like, we just work well. And the way we benefit with each other is, like, it's weird how well we work. Mm-hmm. But, like, that's a good friendship because you bring ideas that I would never thought of. And, like, you know, like, it's just kind of, like, how we bounce off each other. Yeah. 100%. And, like, a good friendship, like, not even just in content, like, just in life in general. Like, you guys are going to benefit each other in your own ways. And that's what makes it a solid friendship. It doesn't have to be years in the making or anything like that. As long as you guys can benefit each other or, like, help each other out at any moment, like, that's what I believe is a solid friendship, you know?
Yeah, and like I said before, building these relationships is never entirely easy. Like I said, you got to pick and choose who you have these conversations with. And I feel like a lot of times you could tell who these real friends are when they stick around. You know, are they just there for your highs? Are they just there for your lows? Are they there for both? You know, the people that are there for your lows, I mean, you could say that they're beneficial to your life, but I don't know. I think the biggest thing to take away from this is that somebody who's there for both aspects of your life, the positive and the negative, are the ones that you need to keep around, because you know, when you're grinding in silence, they're there for you. And then when you're shining in front of everybody, they're there for you. You know, they're the ones rooting you on, but they were also the ones rooting you on while you were in the thick of it. You were in the trenches, you know. Like, having those people around is super important. And I kind of want to bridge this to like overthinking, you know. Overthinking, are these the right people for me? Is this the right? So and overthinking can be said in anything, you know. Overthinking, you know, some decision you made that day, or somebody's in a certain relationship and stuff like that. I think one way that I would say to not overthink as much is stuff that we kind of talked about earlier, the whole codependency thing, you know.
Yeah, you know, I personally have a really hard time not overthinking. That's a big problem that I deal with. But you know, just recently I started an internship. You know, I have my job, and then I have school, of course. But so, like, my schedule kind of picked up, like, a lot within the last about month or two. So I've been really, like, busy. You know, I've always had something kind of to do. I didn't have a lot of free time to just kind of lay in my bed and do nothing, you know. And, you know, whereas before I was a lot more, like, I had a really hard time with overthinking because I'd have all this free time to just, you know, lay around, and, like, all these bad thoughts and, like, all this kind of, you know, this negative place that I would put myself in was, I think it all just kind of stemmed from having so much free time to just, you know, overthink and, like, think about all the bad. But when I was busy, when I was being active, when I was, you know, doing things that were going to benefit me, you know, working hard, you know, having a lot less free time on my hands, I felt my like, you know, my mental health, my everything just, you know, was enhanced. It was better. And I think that the reason for that is, you know, if you keep yourself busy, you're going to do better. And I think that it's really important to just kind of work on yourself in any way possible, you know, as best you can to, you know, help yourself in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, Overthinking is something that I think a lot of people deal with. I feel like that's, an easy thing to say. A lot of people deal with going, like you said, going to bed at night and you have so much time on your hands where the only thing you can do is overthink. The only thing you can do is like, what did I do wrong today? Say you're in a relationship with someone, they're not talking to you for X amount of time, say that they have a really good reason, but you're still sitting there consuming yourself in your thoughts. Did I do something wrong? Why are they not talking to me? But I also think that roots from an insecurity. However, I mean, that's not entirely what we're talking about right now. The whole overthinking thing is just like, you got to be able to realize when you're doing it,
Yeah, sometimes it really just is all in your head, right? Like,
yeah, 100%. It's definitely on your head because if you think about it, like I said, it's the whole insecurity thing. If like this person's not talking to you for whatever reason, they have a good reason, but you're still sitting there, still thinking about it. You're creating that own issue in your own head, and it's hard to realize that you're doing it. But the minute that you do, is when you should take initiative.
Yeah, and another thing too is like you mentioned, like half the time you're just making up these fake scenarios in your own head, and even if it's not necessarily going on, and I think that all the time that you spend worrying about these scenarios that might not even be taking place, it's doing you no good at all. Like sitting there and overthinking is not, especially if it's not happening and you're just overthinking about something you've made up in your own head. I think that you need to just try to, as best you can, take that time to do other things instead of overthinking, sitting around thinking of the worst. If you can like channel that time spent instead of spending in a negative way, if you can do whatever it is, you can go work out at the gym, you can go occupy your time in a beneficial way in order to not overthink and to not give yourself time to sit there and think of all the bad that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, like for me personally, like I kind of recognized when I would start to overthink. I kind of figured like, once it's like every time at this time of the night, like this is when I usually start overthinking. Like it's usually because I have nothing going on at this specific time of night. So like usually I started to recognize that I was starting to like overthink and I was having trouble falling asleep and stuff like that. So I started to realize that maybe I should find melatonin because like Mikey uses it because I'm not even a kid, bro. Like I have a hard time sleeping. Like I cannot fall asleep. And Mikey's like the same way. Like we'll stay up till like 7 a.m. Like
what the hell?
We'll just be tired, bro, but we can't fall asleep. Like we just can't. It's like I guess you could say insomnia, but like at the same time, like is it insomnia or like are we just in our heads like can't fall asleep because we're just in our heads? So once I started taking melatonin, like, dude, it's been like night and day. Like, I don't overthink as much because I know once it hits a certain time.
Not by any means are we saying that you should turn to.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying, like, for me, it works. So, like, for me, it works.
No,
so,
I hear you.
Like, let's just say, for example, like me, 1 o'clock comes around. I'm like 1 a.m. I'm like, dude, this is usually the time I start to overthink. I'm gonna take melatonin so that way I could fall asleep before I get in my own head. Like, that's personally what happened for me. But that's because I just have a hard time sleeping. So, like, if you are able to control your sleep schedule and you're able to fall asleep fairly easily, I'd say go to sleep earlier so that way you don't have time to be in your head and just laying there in bed. Try to get to bed earlier so that way you can wake up the next day feeling refreshed and get on with your day, do new activities, whatever it is you got to do,
I think that sleep schedule is a huge thing in mental health. Like,
yeah.
Huge
yeah,
thing.
that's the biggest.
That's probably why I struggle so much with mental health is because I stay up, dude, till like 5, 6 in the morning every night.
Psychotic.
And like I'll wake up for work at like 9, 10, like, and I'm off like a couple hours of sleep, and like that can't be good for you every night, bro. Like can't be
like,
right.
like especially when you have like a really erratic, because I've dealt with this. I mean, I know he does. I'm talking to him on the mic every night at 4 a.m.
We live together, so like we know like our
Yeah.
sleep schedule is exactly the same.
for
bro.
sure.
Like, it's
But like
crazy.
the late night, like when you're up and it's 2, 3, 4, 5 a.m.
Sad boy
and,
hours.
Yeah, and you're by yourself. All you do is think of all the
Sheesh.
bad. And then another thing about that's important, is if you do have that regular sleep schedule, like I feel like a lot of people like underestimate the impact that like going outside can have on like your mental
100%.
health. Like getting out in the sun, even just like walking around, going to the beach, whatever, like anything. Even you can just take a step outside and like sit on the porch for a little bit. Like going outside and actually being in the sun is just like the best thing ever. Like especially helping with like your mental health. Like,
yeah, because there's been days, bro. Like there's been like times, bro, where I don't go outside for like 3 days. Cause like I'm just in my head, bro. Like I don't sleep and I'm just like laying there and like I don't want to do anything. So like there will be times where I'm like inside constantly for 2-3 days and like I'm like, dude, I gotta go outside. Like one time I woke up and I was like, Mom, I'm getting pale. Like I need some sun. And that's like, that was it. That was when I drew the line, bro.
This guy's an idiot,
This
bro.
guy, man.
I'm just saying, bro, because I'm darker, you know, like I'm darker skin tone.
Yeah, you're a little
And
dark guy.
when I noticed I was getting pale, bro, I was like, dude, this is not good. Like
Yeah, this is getting pretty
I
bad.
need to get a grip.
So if that's the case, then what would you say to people that kind of have the issue of just like getting the motivation to walk out of their house?
I think you just need to force yourself to. I know it's hard, and like a lot of people say that, but like you literally just have to force yourself to go outside. Like set whatever goal, whatever like that you think you're gonna do. Like whether that's going to walk once a day for 20 minutes, outside.
Just like step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, push yourself to get out there and like actually force yourself to get outside.
Well, like and like me personally, I would just walk to my garage and like open up the garage door and just look outside. And I just look around the neighborhood. Or like what I noticed is when Pete lived with me. He would wake up and he'd make breakfast or whatever, and then he would eat his breakfast in the backyard and just like kind of just hang out there, play some music. And
Sounds like such a vibe.
Sounds
yeah,
so good.
that's how you'd start off his day.
Yeah.
He'd just eat breakfast in the backyard, listen to music, and just be out in the sun. And like for him, that probably helped him get ready for the day and have energy. And I'm sure that helped him a lot. I mean, I never talked to him about it, but I'm sure if we asked him, like it probably helped. Like it's better than what I do when I like wake up.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that you touched on was like being able to realize when you're overthinking.
Yeah.
I think that's one big thing. And like I said before, that's when you need to take initiative, is when you start to realize that's when, for you take the melatonin or whatever, you go to bed.
Yeah.
But for somebody that like, for some reason, it's just like going out throughout maybe they don't have anything going on that day. And that's the time that they start to overthink. And the biggest thing is catching it. The second you catch it should be, in my opinion, it's a step forward, is that you're able to realize that you're catching yourself in that moment overthinking. Yeah, I feel like it's a lot easier at that moment. Because there's people that are so down bad to a point that when they're overthinking, they don't know that it's happening. They're just in an ongoing cycle. They're just in the mix, bro. So I think being able to realize when you're in that is where you need to take initiative, is where you need to be like, look, you need, like, here's the thing, is say it out loud if you have to. Say, I'm overthinking right now. I need to do something.
Yeah, like, I mean, I've personally, like, overthinking, like, I've stressed my girlfriend over some, like, stuff that I can look back now and be like, wow, like you were, like, in that moment, like, no matter how upset you are in that moment,
just
how much you're overthinking in that moment, like, if you could just, like, try to take a step back and just really think about what it is you're upset about or what it is you're overthinking about, and just like, try to breathe,
Just nip it on the bud,
Yeah,
Like the minute like I said, the minute you catch yourself should be the minute you take a step back and be like, this is happening right now. Let me find a way out.
And like, I know, I mean, I could, from personal experience, I know that like when you're overthinking too, and like after the fact, like whatever you get into, like whether it's an argument or, you get upset, especially like with with my girlfriend, like after the fact, if you wish you could just kind of like take it back, like you wish you weren't so in the moment and you weren't so like I wish that I wouldn't have, like, a lot of times I wouldn't have acted or like spoke on like what I was feeling in the moment. I wish that I could have just waited and, really like took a second to breathe and just like let it smooth over before going back. Cause so many times you go back and like you realize that like whatever it was you were overthinking or you were upset about was just you in the moment. And that if you could have just realized that it was just overthinking and that it was nothing to look into, it would have been
yeah,
like,
but also realizing it after the fact, I think, is something beneficial as well. Because if you go back and, like you said, think about like, oh man, I overreacted in this sense because I was just overthinking. Being able to realize it is the first step in making yourself better, I think. You know what I mean? Because like if you're blind to it, then it's just going to keep happening. Yeah. But because you know that it's continuously happening and you know that that's something that you do when you start to overthink, then that gives you the opportunity to nip it on the bud. Be like, look, I know this is what happens when I overthink. Let me reassess the situation before I get any further. Like I said, it's definitely easier said than done. But it's something that you should definitely slow down when you think that you're overthinking, or in the future you're like, okay, when this starts to happen, this is what I need to do. And whether that be just kind of take a few deep breaths and be like, really think about the situation before you act, think before you speak. I feel like a lot of the times when we're overthinking, we start, thinking thoughts that obviously we definitely shouldn't be thinking about, whether that be, I mean, this is going to sound really dark and shit, but like, being suicidal or like harming yourself and stuff like that. I think those are the thoughts that come in, obviously, when you're overthinking. And I think, like I said, once you start to realize that those are the thoughts that come to you when you overthink, it should be the time where you going back to the whole codependency thing. Find that one thing that you're comfortable doing, the thing that makes you happy. And again, it's easier said than done, but the more you practice that, it's something that you need to chip away at for sure.
Yeah.
It's something that, like, okay, I'm starting to overthink. Let me pick up my PS5 controller. Let me pick up my guitar. Let me, something like that.
Have you guys ever been on TikTok, on the sad side of TikTok? All right, we're not talking about the
here we
happy
go.
side right now. No, but like, have you ever?
TikTok gives me trust issues.
Yeah, but like, have you ever been on the sad side of TikTok and ever seen a video with a quote that says, "If you ever meet a person that has this mentality of it is what it is, like just know they're the dangerous type because they've been through a lot and they don't really care anymore. Like whatever happens, they're gonna accept it." Have you guys ever seen like that society?
No, I haven't.
So basically, what it is like, let's say something bad were to happen to you, right? Something that just brought your mental health super low, right? And you get through it on your own because let's just say in the situation you have no one to talk to, right? And you got through it on your own. So what it's saying is that people, like for example me, I went through something that was pretty tough on me personally. And at the time I felt like I had no one to talk to. I wasn't really going out. I wasn't eating. I wasn't really doing much. And it lasted for probably about 2 years. I went through this tough time for like 2 years. And I just got used to being on my own, and I figured out how to pull myself out of it through 2 years. It took me time, but I figured a way out of it by myself. And now I've developed this mentality of whatever happens, happens. Like it is what it is. And what it is saying that it's the dangerous type because this person has been through so much on their own that they don't need anyone else to help them out. That they've already reached to the point where they are in life by themselves. And that's why they say they're the dangerous type. And that's where I'm at. Like I was talking to Mikey about it last night. Like I feel like I'm at a point where I feel like I've been at my lowest in life already. Like obviously there's more of life to live. And like there could be a time where I get even lower. But so far, I feel like I've been at the lowest point. And I feel like there's not too much things left in the world right now that can hurt me. Like obviously losing like my parents or my sister, like that's gonna be like the ultimate low. But other than that, like nothing else can bother me. Nothing else is gonna hurt me. And knowing that for me helps me get through days where I'm like, I'm not feeling too good about today. I'm kind of feeling bad. But like knowing what I've already been through has helped me proceed with going on and working through smaller things.
Some things just don't seem as bad anymore.
Yeah, like I just feel like I'm kind of numb to like smaller
But
things.
like, would you say that that's a good thing though?
That's the thing. I don't know. Cause like I've talked to Mikey about it. Like there's times where I'm like, dude, I wish I could feel sad. I wish I could. Cause like, no, bro.
Such a strange thing to want to feel.
Cause think about it, bro. People feel happy, they feel sad, they feel anger, right? These are the different emotions. But like, if you take one emotion away, bro, like, are you really living? Like, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, that's true.
Cause like, I'm not always happy. I'm not always angry. Like a lot of people think I don't like them. That's not true. I just don't talk to people.
Yeah, you're just a dick.
Not even that, bro.
Introverted's another word.
Yeah, like I just don't talk to people. Like,
yeah, I'm kidding.
And like people look at me and they're like, "Oh, he hates me." But like, truth be told, I don't hate anybody. Like, there's not a single person I can think of that I hate, like at all.
I think I could say the same.
And it's just like I don't know, man. It's kind of weird.
I think not only like whatever happens, but I also think time is a big thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of times like a more common one is you see like people who have been cheated on, go through bad breakups. Someone tells you they don't love you anymore, whatever the case may be. I feel like so many people, they get so upset about that and they think it's the end of the world. And, they ask, like, they'll reach out for help or for advice and stuff. And, especially like, the older heads, they always say like, oh, time heals all. Like, like it may seem bad in the moment, but I promise it's not that big a deal. But that kind of does nothing for you. But I feel like, a lot of times it's kind of like one of those things that you can't just teach yourself. Like, you have to experience it yourself. You have to get through that hard time. You have to like let the time pass and heal. And like, it's kind of like when you're, when you have a family member or an uncle or someone and they tell you, when you were a kid, enjoy the good days while you're in them. you know, and you're kind of like, shut up, old man. Like, you know, like,
yeah, shut up,
you're
grandpa.
like, shut up. And like, you're like, let me play football with my friends in the front yard, you know, but then you get older one day and you get your job and you realize that that childhood's over.
Yeah.
And it hits you and you're like, wow, you know, I wish I would have listened. I wish I would have like realized that.
Isn't it? Sorry, go ahead.
And I just think that like, you know, that's time's kind of one of those things too. Like, you know, when you're going through a breakup or whatever the case may be, like, I think that, you know, other people can tell you like, it'll get better. You know, it's not the end of the world. It may seem bad now and you'll realize that later. But in the moment, it's just kind of one of those things where you really just have to experience it yourself and you have to get through it.
I was just going to say, it's kind of like a side thought. The fact that our last day hanging out outside with our friends was the last day and we didn't even fucking realize it. Yeah. Isn't that such a crazy thought?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I don't even remember when the last time was.
That's what I'm saying.
But I do have I have memories.
Yeah, no, 100%. You definitely have those memories.
And
in the
also,
back.
like, in terms of, like, you know, wishing, like, back in the old days and stuff, I think that not enough people look at life in, like, chapters. So they'll always, you know, especially with, like, high school and stuff, they'll look back and they say, oh, it was so fun, you know, we were having such good times, and they always kind of think like their best years are behind them. But I think that people need to look at life in more of like this chapter is over, but in order to, like, you know, let a new one begin. So you might not be going to parties and having fun and going out and like doing, you know, high school, college things, but maybe your next chapter is, you know, getting your career job and starting to make real money and, you know, being able to go on vacations with your friends and like, or, you know, having a kid and watching him grow and just like early parenthood, like whatever the case may be. I think that like life just comes in chapters, and like a lot of people need to just kind of understand and appreciate that, you know, change is inevitable, and, you know, well, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
One thing about that is that there's definitely like the whole chapter thing that you said about let's view life as a book, right? Mm-hmm. You can't get to the end of the story without the chapters prior. You know what I'm saying? So every single thing that's happened in the past, every chapter before, plays a role in your future. Mm-hmm. So people can't just forget about the past because they're still there. If you open up a book, you read through it, those past chapters are still going to be there. I mean, shit, you could rip the pages out, but that still happened. You still read those pages. You still experienced that. You can't throw that away. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, so
it adds to the story.
It adds
in the
to
end,
the story.
You know what I mean?
And like, since we're talking about that, I was on sad TikTok last night, bro.
Dude, this guy can't get off sad TikTok, bro. We gotta get you a new For You page, bro.
I know. Send me some
goodness.
DMs, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna start sending you TikToks.
But no, I was on sad
TikTok,
TikTok, right? And I'm barely on it. Like, I know I brought it up, but like, I'm barely on it, bro. Like,
yeah.
I'm usually going to get side of TikTok. Okay?
I sure hope so.
No, mostly video games. You know,
right,
it's good.
Fair enough.
But no, but last night, because I was talking to Mikey and Stoner, and we were just like, kind of just getting in our feels, you know, opening it up. And I was on TikTok, right, to send a Stoner TikTok. So I was looking for sad TikToks, okay?
Right.
So don't put me on blast like that.
All right,
I was looking for sad ones.
All right, looking
But anyways, I saw one, right? And it kind of hit me because the TikTok said, never regret anything that happens to you in life, whether it's good or bad. Because either way, it's a life lesson. So
100%.
Yeah, you're right. So if something tragic were to happen to you, don't regret that it happened. Don't think about what could have been done differently to change that outcome, because no matter what, it happened and there's nothing you can do about it. So don't regret it. Instead, take it as a life lesson. No matter how hard it is, you got to just take it and learn from it, so that way you can prevent it from happening if possible. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, like you said, is not regretting anything. Don't regret anything ever, because like we were talking about the whole chapter thing, like those things happen for a reason. It's all part of the grand scheme of things. You know, you're going to become the human being you are at the end of the day because of the things that you went through. And I also think that human beings and people change day in and day out. The same person you see me as today is not going to be the same person that I am 4 years from now, 2 years from now, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, there's different hardships that people go through, and there's different ups that people go through that are going to give them different outlooks on life. And I think, like we said before, it's the grand scheme of things. It's going to happen, and it's going to form you to be the person that you are, you know? So yeah. I think we definitely can't just throw all that stuff away. It'd be stupid to.
I just want to say we're running out of time. So if we want last comments, anything you want to talk about, last topic? You know?
Closing comments here. I know we kind of stopped like abruptly, but we are running out of time here. I just want to say that back to the point of being codependent on stuff, find something that you're passionate about. Find something that you love. However, don't only depend on that one thing. when overthinking, when you figure out that you're doing it, you know, nip it on the bud. Find something that makes you happy.
If I'm gonna give one piece of advice right now is, if you guys need help, it's just always better to talk about it. Like even
100%.
if you're watching this, you probably know me or Dave pretty well, and if you guys need anything, we're more than
happy to help.
Yeah, more than happy to help.
Even just like I had a conversation with a friend earlier. You don't have to expect me to say something to you. I don't have to give you advice. You just want somebody to listen, and I can confidently say that all three of us are here for you.
Like I listen to so many of my friends whenever they're going through things, and I'm more than happy to do it. Like it's honestly something that I'm happy to do because at least I can help my friend out. It's one way I can benefit them.
It makes me happy too.
So like if you guys need help or anything like that, feel free to reach out to us. Like
or even like like I hope you can be inspired enough to like go give an ear to someone who needs it.
100%. If you're not that person that's willing to listen to somebody, give it a chance. Trust me, you may fall in love with the fact that like people are willing to rely on you for some sort of happiness.
And you're also able to bring in a new perspective for that person. That's
what they may have never seen before. Yeah, 100%. I agree.
You also take a new perspective on things. Like you could take what their situation is and think about it, and try to be in their situation and think about it. Like you're able to get so many different perspectives by just talking about things, and I think that is super crucial in becoming a better person. Like just being open to other people's
just building
ideas.
Relationships with as many people as you can, because at the end of the day, the person benefiting from it is you. There's no negative from learning through other people's either mistakes or other people's griefs and stuff like that. So definitely always reach out to somebody, always be willing to lend an ear to somebody. With that being said, I think we can close this up for episode 2 of the Purpose Podcast. I'm David YUURRR.
And I'm Diggy.
I'm Mikey.
Thank you guys again for all the love on the first episode. It really means a lot. Trust me, it does a lot more than you guys think it does. It gives me much more passion to keep going. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.